You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Mighty Blue podcast and a recap of our last 4 days on trail. To be honest, I think I was a lot more optimistic last time I caught up with you, because these last 3 days have pretty much kicked my ass. For reasons you will appreciate in a moment, day 17 was a cracking day and one I'm going to remember for a long time. And that was the one that led us down to the NOC. But you know, I do not recall the trail from the NOC to Fontana Dam being so difficult. It certainly was for me. I always remember the hike up and out of the NOC being challenging, exhausting even. Yet that recollection has either blurred over the years or I've wiped it from my mind, because it was tough. The first time on this trip, I've had kind of doubts about my ability to increase the mileage that's necessary to get me to the end. That said, as I often tell others, so far there hasn't been a mountain I couldn't get over, so I'm going to be going with that for now to just keep me going. I've got the Smokies coming up on Monday morning, and I'm resting on this Sunday in the hope that a little bit of rest is all I need. I'm not entirely sure that's true, but once again I'm holding my hopes on the fact that it's just a day's rest will be great. Don't get me wrong though, this hasn't got me down, and I still feel that I can face these mountains because, you know, I've done so in the past. Stepping up the miles is going to happen after the Smokies though, when I hit Max Patch, Irwin and Hot Springs, and I know I'll be increasing the daily mileage then. I think I've done up to nearly 12 miles a day on one day so far, so I'm kind of pushing on a little bit, but there's something about the way in which you need to make that step up. I don't think I've quite felt that yet. But there were times on day 20, which will be the last one you're going to hear about, the one that took me down to Fontana Dam, when I felt my legs were actually kicking in. And for those brief moments, I remembered that feeling again that you have, that gives you an almost, an air of invincibility. It soon passed, of course. As I say, I'm recuperating for the day and gearing myself up for what's to come tomorrow. Let's hear what happened back on day 17. But before we do, a quick word from our sponsor, Polar Steps. If you're heading out on a long hike this year, which I am, I've got something I think you're going to love. It's called Polar Steps. It's a travel tracking app that's going to become a favourite with hikers. You set your start date, let it run quietly in the background, and it maps your entire journey automatically, all on your own beautiful spinning 3D globe. And don't worry, the tracking feature uses about 4% of your battery on a single charge, so it's not going to kill your phone when you're out there. You can add photos and short journal entries as you go, so your map shows you where you were and your words remind you of what that day actually felt like. There's a light social layer too. Family and friends can follow along, or you can keep it completely private. As every hiker says, hike your own hike. And when you're done, you can relive the whole thing in the app or turn it into a stunning coffee table book with your route, stats, photos and stories. And did I tell you that it's entirely free to download and use? The only time you'll be paying anything is if you decide to turn your trip into a book. That's Polar Steps. Track it now, treasure it forever. Day 17, Betty's Day. Cold Spring Shelter to the NOC, an 11.6 mile day. This is always going to be Betty's Day in my mind. Let me tell you what happened. A couple of years ago, I was following on the podcast my friend Betty McEnany, and I've since hiked with her as well before when we did the Virginia Triple Crown. But anyway, she was on this through hike. We'd actually already met her and her husband Bruce, who were at the Woods Hole weekend as well. So we kind of got to know each other. And she was on this through hike 2 or 3 years ago. I can't quite remember what it was. And she came to a very sketchy turn up around 4,000 feet. It was between Tellico Gap and the NOC. And she just couldn't bring herself to go round it. There was a big drop off at the back, at the side, and it's a sharp right-hand turn. And she just couldn't make it past it. So she turned back and went all the way back to Tellico Gap. Then she got a shuttle to the NOC and she called me. And at the time I said to her, look, Betty, you need to carry on. Just go on with it. And, there'll be a time in the future you can fill in. And if you want me to, I'll drive up from Florida and I'll help you through it. And, we'll get you past it. So she seemed to appreciate that. And so fast forward 2 years or whatever it was, and I'm doing a through hike. So I reached out to Betty and believe it or not, Betty and Bruce drove 2 days from Vermont just to walk from Tellico Gap to the NOC, which is about 9 miles, which is great, really, in many ways. So we arranged to meet last Wednesday, I think it was Wednesday, last Wednesday. And I was actually, in the meantime, I was at the Cold Spring shelter, and the walk down to Tellico Gap is about 3.6 miles to go, but a lot of it was downhill. So I said, I'll meet them at 9 o'clock at Tellico Gap. My alarm went off at 5. And those of you who remember the place, the Cold Spring shelter, where I was at the top, there's this little ridge and there's some great camping sites up there, and I was up there. And I got up at 5, I was breakfasting, of course, can't miss my breakfast, my coffee and my breakfast, in the dark at the little table that's up there. And I actually set out at 7:10, which is pretty good for me. And I moved well, and I got there at 9 o'clock. So the year of little faith, I made it. Now, my friend Eric, who I'd had a drink with in Franklin, and who also knew Betty and hiked with Betty, was there as well to surprise her. So there was 2 of us, and we were waiting for Bruce and Betty. Eventually they turned up, and we set off. And the start was very steep up to Wesserbald. There's a fire tower up there, and for some reason I went up the fire tower because it's there. And Betty had told me that the problem with this turn was that it was within 0.1 mile of the NOC. And I absolutely knew that it wasn't. I knew that it was very high up because there was a very steep fall right to the side of it. And as we're walking along on this really kind of exposed ridge, I'm thinking, we're coming close to it. This was exactly how I remembered it. And suddenly we were there. And I went down and tried to encourage Betty to come down. And I immediately saw doubt in her eyes. But she's a very practical woman. She worked it out. And I was almost shielding her from the drop. And she found a better way down by holding onto a sapling and just easing herself around the corner. And it enabled her to scramble around the corner and down. She was jubilant, as she should be, by the way. The rest of it was a long, long walk down, and she was very happy with that. And I was staying at the Rambling Roots hostel with Bookie, who was a guest on the show not too long ago. And Betty and Bruce invited me for dinner, and I went to dinner with them. And after dinner, Bruce, who is a kind of stoic guy, he called me back and he thanked me for helping her. And it was quite touching because we were both quite emotional about it. Something that we'd been able to do, give Betty that day. So that was the end of Betty's day for me. Day 18, the NOC to Sassafras Shelter. Just a 7-mile day, but it was nearly all uphill. It was a freaking nightmare. In fact, these next 2 days, 18 and 19, started to make me doubt my ability to do this, because I was struggling and I was exhausted when I got to camp both times. They were big uphills, and I've got to tell you, I was delighted that the guy in the at the end of day 19, which is the day after the one I'm about to talk about, he said that this stretch, these two days up from NOC to Sassafras, and then from the Sassafras to the next shelter, which I think was Brown Fork Shelter, are 2 of the tougher days in the south. And I think he's probably right. So I shouldn't be berating myself about struggling, but because everybody else seemed to be struggling doing that as well. But anyway, so I was at the NOC, remember? Betty and Bruce had gone back to Vermont. And I got down to the outfitter shop to get some resupply. And then I went across the road to the merchandise shop to get even more resupply and probably got too much. I'm incredibly indisciplined when it comes to resupply. I must be more sensible with it because, of course, I'm just carrying stuff and then eating stuff for the sake of it. So because the outfitter shop didn't open till about 9 o'clock, I didn't set out for the trail till about, I think it was about 10 o'clock. And I immediately got lost. You go over from the NOC, there's a bridge across the river, and then you start heading up and you cross over a railway line. And I don't know what happened then. I just got lost. And I eventually found my way back to the trail and started heading on up. So, when it's 7 miles, nearly all uphill, you know it's going to be a tough day. And pretty soon I passed two ladies. And these two ladies were in their, as it turns out, in their early 60s, I believe, 61, 62. And as I breezed past them, I thought to myself, well, I'll probably never see them again, and I don't know why, because I think I should be faster than two 62-year-old ladies, but of course I'm 73 myself. And just to give you an example of what it's like when you're out on trail thinking strange things, I'm ahead of these two women. I can see them 100 yards, 200, maybe 300 yards behind me. And I started thinking about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. If you've seen the movie, Butch and Sundance, they're involved in all sorts of robberies and that. And eventually the law have had enough of them and they start trying to track them. So the ladies were getting closer and closer. I was saying, as Butch and Sundance did, who are these guys? And I was thinking about, if you remember, that they were being tracked by Joe LaForce, who was I think he was a lawman out of Wyoming, and Lord Baltimore, who was a Native American tracker. For some reason, these two innocent-looking ladies were Lord Baltimore and Joe LaForce. And I thought I was going to stay ahead of them. They kept coming at me, kept catching me up. And I walked through some of the damage wrought by Hurricane Helene. And once more, it is remarkable to me how they've cleared the trail so well. You see this morass of trees all piled on top of one another off the trail, and they've cleared the trail for us to come through. It's quite something. Anyway, eventually, Joe LaForce caught up with me. Her name is Natasha. And I realised, of course, then that I was the one who was over 70, so there was a pretty good chance they would catch up with me. Nevertheless, I kind of got some momentum going again, and I got ahead again, and they caught me again as I was getting water from a really good source. I pushed on for another half mile or so, and I found a terrific little outcrop. You've got to watch for them sometimes, but you often do a little turn in the switchback. And if you look up to your left, there was this, or in this case, to the left, 3 or 4 or 5 yards, you saw there was an open area, a rocky area, and I went up there, and it was a beautiful, beautiful spot. And I set up my chair, of course, and to have some lunch. And I think this is where it all went wrong. I contacted Dana, had a conversation with her, had my lunch, and then I fell asleep. I was probably there for, 45 minutes, possibly an hour. When I restarted, and this has happened before, when I restarted, all my momentum was gone. And it didn't help that immediately following my unscheduled break, the sharpest climb of the day was upon me. I struggled so much. There were steep, twisting climbs. I was resting endlessly between, 15 and 20 yard thrusts upwards. It certainly wasn't vertical, but it felt it on my tired legs. And I was clearly behind most of the people who'd left that morning, and I expected to find plenty of them at the shelter. It's called Sassafras Shelter. And I know that back in 2014, I think it was. Yeah, 2014, I stayed in that shelter. It was pouring with rain outside, and there must have been 20 people in the shelter. And that was the day I lost my air pad. It fell off my pack and fell down the mountain, never to be seen again. And people chipped in with little bits of sort of the underlay that some people sleep on, instead of an air mattress. And they gave me bits, and I was making that work to sleep through the night. And I always remember that typical of hikers, they pulled together to help me get through the night. So I really appreciated that. But then I got there, and there was hardly anybody there, and none that I recognised, other than Joe LaForce and Lord Baltimore, of course. And I got into conversation with all of them, and one of them, Sue, or Joe LaForce, was speaking on the phone to a family, and it was clear that she missed them. And I asked her if she would let me record her and ask her about that. I'm going to play that at the end of this recording. But you know I like this sort of thing. I also gave her trail name. I suggested Sweet Tears, and once more she didn't say no. So I'm going with that. And in fact, she's kept it. She's now known as Sweet Tears on the trail. And also at the shelter was a terrific young man. He was Henry, or Hot Tang. There was so much more about this young guy, and I got to him to tell his story as well. I'll play both of those after this. But eventually, about 8 o'clock, after chatting with each other, everyone turned in, and it was a tough day, and one of the toughest days I'd had on the trail so far. But once again, I made it. So I'm sitting in a shelter. What's it called, the shelter, by the way?
Sassafras.
Sassafras shelter. There aren't many of us here. I was expecting more to be here. And I'm sitting with a young lady who is enjoying her through hike, I think. Can you tell us your name?
Sue Powell.
Sue Powell. And what's your trail name?
I don't have one.
Oh, well, it might be Tears.
It could be Tears.
It may well be Tears. So
could be Tears, Caboose.
Well, I've been listening to you on the phone, not interrupting your call, but we've been sitting together. And I know you're now 140 odd miles into your through hike. First, how's it going?
It's going great. I am loving every day.
But you're missing home.
I am missing my family, yes.
Right. So did you think about that before you came out?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And what was the thought process?
Of course, I'd love to have somebody do it with me, but no one in my family wants to do it with me.
Right.
So I have a friend who says, don't let dreams be dreams. And I'm going to live that. So
are you, I don't want to reduce you to tears here, by the way, but I heard you talking to grandchild, obviously, and other members of the family. Are you going to see some of them at all, or what's going to happen? Yes,
my daughter and my grandson, who is Cal, are coming out in June to hike around Grayson Highlands and see the ponies.
Right, right. Mm-hmm. So you're looking forward to that, no doubt?
I am very much looking forward to that, and I hope my husband comes. So.
But do you think that the... What do you mean you hope your husband comes? Hang on, I was about to go past that. What do you mean you hope your husband comes?
Well, I just hope that he comes with them. He doesn't like to travel.
Oh, right,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, are you going to take a few days off trail then?
Well, we're going to hike, but, I mean, I'll be with them, and they want to hike some of the trail. My daughter is currently pregnant, too, but they want to hike and do a little sightseeing. So I'll take a little time off, but hopefully hike a little every day.
So how's it gone so far, the whole trip so far?
It has been fabulous. I have loved every minute. I've met so many people, and as Hot Tang said, like, you can meet people and hear about their life story in 5 minutes.
That's
and that
right.
doesn't happen anywhere else in the world.
Absolutely right. And people are prepared to tell their story, aren't they, as well? And what about, you found it difficult at all so far? Because I thought today was the toughest day I've had anyway. It was about 6 or 7 miles uphill. That's a lot from you. So.
Yes, I've had some, Georgia was a surprise that it was hard, but I think my hardest days were Albert Mountain. It was raining. And yeah,
wow.
That was hard.
Don't trust the rocks and the roots.
And then today was really hard.
And what are you best at, ups or downs?
I mean, it feels better on my feet going up.
Right. Yeah, it does me as well, actually, yeah. My toes have been bashed against the end of my shoes all the time. And the ambition is obviously to get to Katahdin. How long have you wanted to do this?
I don't even, so long. I mean, maybe since I was 10.
Oh, really?
I mean, a very, very long time. I probably read something in National Geographic as a little kid or some magazine like that, and have always wanted to do it.
So why was this year the year?
What's that?
Why was this year the year?
Well, I'm unhappily retired.
That's and the smile on your face doesn't show well on the podcast, by the way. You smiled that you're unhappily retired,
Yeah.
So this is the kind of, I suppose, the $64,000 question. Is the family thing more of an issue than you thought it would be, and do you think it could ever take you off the trail?
I don't think it'll take me off the trail. I'm surprised that I'm actually crying about it. That is a shock to me.
What I would say to you, and I think I did mention earlier, I think all emotions are exacerbated out here. This isn't going to get any easier on you for that, so you need to be prepared for that, I think, anyway. But then seeing your family is really nice. Will they see you further north as well?
Probably not.
No?
Probably not.
Okay. Well, I wish you well with it, and
Thank you.
I hope you can keep the tears away long enough to keep your eye on the path, and you don't let it ruin your hike.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So at the same shelter as I've just been with Sue or Sweet Tears, which she's nodding, she kind of likes that one, yeah. We're here with Hot Tang. What's your real name?
Henry Southall is my real name.
All right.
And but I go by Hot Tang out here. Not everyone's heard of the drink before, but introducing as I go.
There you go. You're not Asian, are you, for Hot Tang? You're not sponsored by Hot Tang.
Oh, no, I'm not.
That would be pretty cool, though, wouldn't it?
Maybe I'll try to get it as I go. Who knows?
There you go. So I know you're doing more than an 80 through hike. So tell us where you started.
So I started down in Alabama at Flag Mountain, and I did the Pinhoti Trail, which is 350 miles from Alabama up into Georgia.
When did you start?
I started March 1st. I believe it's April 9th. It's April 9th today, right?
Yeah.
So I started 40 days ago now.
And you've done 400 and something miles.
Oh, let's see. I had 420 done when I got to the Appalachian Trail.
You've done 560 miles.
560 miles.
Just over a month. Oh my gosh.
Because the Pinhoti was 350, and then I connected into the Benton MacKay Trail for a southbound 70-mile section down to Springer. And then when I hit Springer, I already had pretty good trail legs, so I was able to just start moving up the AT.
Yeah. So he was telling us just now that what I've done in 2 days, he did in about, a few hours. You've just done 19 miles to get here, haven't you?
Oh, yes.
How are you feeling? Are you feeling good?
Oh, I'm feeling pretty good. My legs were starting to feel the elevation climb a little bit on that climb up out of there.
Good.
Because today, I was looking back, I think I did a little over 5,000 gain and loss of elevation today.
Man.
So basically back up where I started off.
Yeah, that's a heck of a lot, isn't it? Yeah.
But today, I mean, the food at the NOC was what got me through it, I think.
Yeah, that'll do it, yeah. I started this morning at about 10 past 10 to get up here. I ended up here about probably half hour before you. You left at 2 o'clock this afternoon, didn't you, the NOC?
Oh, yeah, from the NOC, yeah. I left about 2 o'clock.
So you've got experience. You were a ridge runner?
Yeah, I was a ridge runner in Maine last summer.
And what was that like?
That was amazing. I got to hike up Saddleback Mountain, which is right near Rangeley, Maine, every day, and be up there interacting with hikers, whether it be day hikers or overnight hikers, and just kind of talk to them about how the trail's going, how the hike's going, try to keep people off the alpine zone, and make sure people are following, leave no trace while they're out there, as well as trying to help people if they got themselves in any situations they weren't ready for, which for the most part people seemed they didn't really happen, because any through hikers by the time they get to Maine seem to know
you should have a rough idea what you're doing here. Now, by the way, I must confess here, Henry has told me off already, because I suggested to another member of our group here, Tasha, that she could wash her food stuff right by the pipe of water, but you told me no.
Yeah, I mean it's not the worst thing it's gonna do, but washing.
I knew
your dishes,
it wasn't that bad.
But washing your dishes in the water, it can attract other animals to the water source, as well as if you were to go fill up water yourself and you saw food chunks or soap bubbles in there.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd be too keen to fill up there.
My argument was, I'm not trying to defend myself at all. Well, I clearly am. But my argument was it would all wash away within seconds, but maybe it wouldn't. And I said, I defer to you because you know what you're talking about, and I appreciate that. So what's the ambition? You're going to get to Katahdin, but when do you think you'll be there? Next week?
Not quite that soon. I really don't have a certain goal. I don't have a certain date in mind, really.
Right.
I haven't taken the time to sit down. I'm thinking probably August, September, somewhere around there.
Well, you'll be there well before that.
Oh, we'll see.
You having a good time?
Oh, I'm having a phenomenal time. I'm thoroughly enjoying all of this.
Thing is that you're probably going faster than most of us, aren't you? Well, you're obviously going faster than all of us here, but you're probably going faster than most of the people around you because you're doing longer days. So you've not really had a chance to form a tramley yet, or have you found somebody you could hike with?
I haven't formed a tramley yet. I've kind of each day I've been going through with different hikers, really, and then sometimes I'll see someone for a couple of days and then move on, or if I hop off for a day, some people will catch back up, kind of thing. But for the most part, each day I've been with new people, really. There's one other hiker. He just got off trail for a few days, but he's also doing the Bama to Baxter of the Penhody Trail, the same route I'm doing.
Oh, right.
And so we were right around the same pace, but he's a little bit older than I am. He's 63 years old, so
He's a lot more than a little bit older than you. How old are you?
Oh, I'm 23, so he's a lot more than a little older than me.
Yes, he's a lot more. I'm 50 years older than you, so yeah, we can see the differences as well. You know what? I think for a young guy to come out and commit yourself to doing this is very laudable. In fact, you've done the other stuff as well. I always appreciate the trail runners, so thanks very much for doing that, and I wish you well the rest of your hike.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mighty Blue.
Cheers. Day 19, Sassafras Shelter to Brown Fork Shelter, just a 9.2 mile day. And I feel I started off behind the 8 ball on this one. We'd had that, I thought, very intense walk uphill from the NOC, and I was tired when I got started. Straight away I was tired. And I knew that very early on we had quite a steep climb straight up to get us to Chihuahua Bald. And Chihuahua Bald is a small grassy area, very small, probably 30, 40 yards wide, with panoramic views out across the valley, absolutely glorious. And I pushed myself to get to the top because I was confident that the majority of the ups, certainly the majority of the big ups, were done for the day once I'd got there. It certainly looked that way on the profile, which just goes to show you should not trust the profile. And at the top of Chihuahua Bald, got my chair out, sat down with hot Tang as we enjoyed the spectacular views. And you know, I've been saying to everybody that my chair is absolutely the one piece of equipment I will never leave behind again. You know, you can have a moment. You know, I was sitting there with this young guy talking about hiking, talking about life. He was 23 years old and I'm 73 years old. And yet those moments are where there's an egalitarianism about this. You know, you're the same people. You're both hikers. He's faster than me, obviously, but you're just hikers, just chatting. And those moments are special, and it's worth taking your time to do them. And for me, having that chair makes it even more comfortable. In fact, someone's even suggested, and I'm definitely going to do this, to get some of that, you know, the stuff, actually I mentioned in the last one, about that stuff that you can lie on instead of having an air pad. And I'm going to try to cut a bit of that off that fits neatly underneath my chair, so I can then set up my chair, of all things, in my tent and sit and read, as opposed to having to get in the sleeping bag. That tends to make me want to drop off. So I'm going to do that. Anyway, I digress. And at this stage, because I'd got to the top of Chihuahua Bald, I was even considering going further than the 9.7 miles to where we were going to go, to Brown Fork Shelter. And I was thinking of heading to the shelter beyond, which would have been a 15-mile day. And the reason I thought I could do it was because the profile, once again, after Brown Fork Shelter looked very, very easy. And I remember thinking to myself, I can do that. Now, of course, those of you who know will know that I was completely deluding myself. This was another difficult day, for me at least. And to list just a few of those difficulties: the initial climb up to Chihuahua Bald, a gut-busting, leg-wrenching climb, then a couple of 200 to 300 foot climbs along the way, and they may not sound much, but at the time They felt really tough. And then of all things, there was this tricky descent down into Stokoe Gap. And as I came back to it, it came back to my mind, having done this before, how difficult that descent was. And I didn't realise it was going to be until it was. And I was in the middle of it, and that was a tricky one as well. But when I got down to Stokoe Gap, there's a trash bin there, which people can chuck their stuff away, obviously. There's a picnic table. I remember that from last time, and I also remember it being a nice, quiet place to sit. Well, now there's workmen all over the place putting up this massive wall and a bridge and all that sort of stuff. And it really kind of changes the ambience more than somewhat. But they're just the few things that I'd listed which were the difficulties, but I'd forgotten the last one, which was Jacob's Ladder. You know, Jacob's Ladder, it's attracted its own name because much like Albert Mountain, it just goes straight up. No switchbacks, straight up with these stairs. And, you know, by the time I got to the end, and by the time I actually got to the shelter, I was completely done. Old Joe LaFors and Lord Baltimore were there, which is Sweet Tears and Tasha, with a couple of guys out for a few days who camped down by the stream. So we didn't really interact with them that evening. But also in the shelter was a guy called Blazer. He's an interesting guy. He's probably 50. He had done not only the hike we'd just done, but he'd also come up from the NOC, which we'd done the day before. And he didn't seem like he was breathing hard at all. We were really struggling. But I set up just about, 20 yards from the shelter with one of the very few places you could set your tent up. And it wasn't a bad site, it wasn't a great site, but we all sat down and chatted until it cooled down, and then people settled down. But in the interim, I had intended to stay at the Hike Inn with a lady called Nancy on the Saturday night, and I called her to see if I could stay Sunday night, because I feel that after these 2 days I needed a rest. My legs were very sore, my toes were particularly sore and getting a bit bruised all the way, so I was struggling with those a little bit on the downs, and I called her to see if I could stay on the Sunday night as well. And unfortunately, she did have any more places. So I didn't want to change to a place. I found another place called the Creekside Paradise on the AT. And they had room for 2 nights. Their Wi-Fi is a little sketchy, but I'm trying to make it work. And so I rearranged my weekend, partly also, and those of you who know me know I love my golf. I want to watch the last round of the Masters, which when I made the arrangement, Rory McIlroy was miles ahead, 6 shots clear. Now he's 1 shot behind. So it's going to be a great day tomorrow to watch the end of that. So my weekend's been rearranged. I get down on on day 20, which is Saturday, and the plan is to get to Fontana Dam and come to this Creekside Paradise out on the AT. And as I'm recording there now, you'll know I probably did it. Day number 20, Brown Fork Shelter to Fontana Dam, an 11.8 mile day. While the 2 previous days have been relatively short mileage, I was left with nearly 12 miles to get to Fontana Dam. Once more, I set my alarm for 5 a.m. and immediately set about packing everything in my tent. If you recall, my Unbound pack by Hyperlight Mountain Gear comes with these pods, which are either 13 litres or 9 litres pods, and each has its own function. For example, my sleeping bag goes in one 13-litre pod, while my electronics, my first aid gear and my AWOL guide go in another pod, along with 1 or 2 other things. They stack neatly upon each other and waste no space in the pack. I've got 4 of them, and it's really helped me separate my gear and in some way keep some sort of order to how the packing is. Once each of the pods was zipped up, I got out and started to prepare breakfast, sitting there in the dark with my chair, boiling my water for my coffee. I've developed a habit, a bad habit as it turns out, of pouring the water into my coffee and keeping the flame going, then filling with cold water again for my breakfast. But on this morning, as I poured the water, flames flew out from the side of the stove. I had to drop everything. There was water all over the place, but fortunately there was no real problem. But it was kind of a warning not to do that again. Consequently, going forward, I will be turning off my gas stove before I pour any water into the coffee. These are little lessons you learn the hard way on the Appalachian Trail, and I certainly learned that one today. Frightened me a bit, really. Sweet Tears and Tasha left in the dark at about 6:30 a.m. I still hadn't packed my tent away by this time. I was still sitting in my chair eating my food. As I set out at 7 a.m. on the dot, I had just left the shelter when Tasha was coming back towards me. She'd forgotten a key to her car, which was at Fontana Dam. Fortunately, she found the key, though I never saw her again that day. So I must have been hiking pretty well. It was a refreshing change from the 2 previous days, and I made pretty good progress as the general inclination of the trail was to be heading downwards and not predominantly upwards. That is not to say that there weren't a few stiff climbs in the interim, but this was a significantly easier day's hike than the previous 2 days for me. And I've got to say, I think I probably started to doubt myself on those previous 2 days, thinking I'm struggling so much and can I up these miles? But my hike today reaffirmed I think that I can do this. I've been reminded once more how supremely important it is for hikers to get sufficient water. And even though I'm drinking a lot of water, it never seems to be enough. I've already mentioned that I pull out my chair at the drop of a hat. So when I found a perfect water spot, I did exactly that. I set my chair up, drank a lot of water that I still had left, then drew my water from the stream that was right next to me and filtered it all into my 2 bottles. Had a further glug of water before refilling everything again. To me, it was another one of those magical moments, and I'm determined not to miss any of those, as this journey unfolds. Eventually, I caught up with Sweet Tears and we started to walk together up what was going to be the toughest climb of the day. It turns out that she's a little bit faster than me on the uphills and I'm quite a bit faster than her on the downhills. We were chatting and she suddenly thanked me for being so kind to her and Tasha the past 2 days. She told me that at a couple of previous shelters, the people they met hadn't given them any time at all, so she appreciated our interactions and it was really quite touching. When we got to the top and started down, I continued to walk with her for a while, but I stopped at a small gap and sat down and she went ahead. I was tired and I knew that we had a little bit more of an up and I needed to just get my composure again, I suppose, and a little more strength to my legs. I set off again and I eventually then passed Sweet Tears because my feet by this time were really giving me a hard time on the downhills. I made it to Fontana Dam by 2:30 that afternoon and sat exhausted, waiting for Jeff from my home for the next 2 days to come and pick me up. With the Smokies coming up, I think that a day off from hiking is quite a good idea, so tomorrow I'll be going to Robbinsville to get a resupply and, hopefully, watch Rory win the Masters again. So, it's been a bit of a physical challenge for these past 3 days, and I hit the Smokies tomorrow morning. One unfortunate thing that happened was that I only got as far as the marina, which you hit just as you leave the forest. I was hoping that Jeff, my hostel owner, would be able to slack pack me this Sunday morning for those 3.5 miles from the marina up to the start point of the Smokies. That would give me all day to take on just that massive climb to get up and into the mountains. Now I've got to take those extra miles onto the big climb. Oh well, you've got to take these things in your stride. Update. I found that I could work that out. Jeff actually took me down to the visitor centre this morning and he couldn't pick me up. So I hiked back to the marina. So that worked out well with a slack pack as well. I did 2 miles in about, 40 minutes. That was really great. And I got picked up by a bloke called Fred, who was a really nice fella who smoked constantly as he dropped me back here. So I've now got those miles out of the way and I will be obviously starting the Smokies from the visitor centre, which will make it so much easier. And I think if you know the trail, you know what I mean. Those extra miles before you actually hit the Smokies would have been tough, but that's out of the way now and I'm now at the visitor centre. One last logistical thing, I'm guessing that I won't get to Newfound Gap until Thursday. So our next episode is likely to be Friday, unless I'm able to get signal at the top of on Wednesday. I mean, you never know, but don't count on it. I'll see you next time.